Because I just have notes.
Oh, see it.
Okay.
All right, so our presentation is on earthquakes and how they've affected SF architecture and culture in general.
So first of all,
Yeah.
SF is built on the San Andreas Fault, which is made from a transform boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. And basically what that means is the two plates are sliding past each other like this, and which is part of the reason why there's so many earthquakes in the Bay Area. So there are a few building strategies that have been developed to help buildings withstand earthquakes. One of them being flexible foundations, which basically involves building a building on top of like pads made of steel, rubber, and lead. And so basically when the earthquake comes, it allows the foundation to move while keeping the building still. And another strategy is countering the forces of earthquakes using dampening. So this is a process where shock absorbers are put inside the building, and there are two types of shock absorbers that have been used in buildings, which are vibration control devices and pendulum power. So how vibration control devices work is shock absorbers that are made of pistons inside a tube full of oil are placed in between column or like beams inside each level of the building. And so when the earthquake comes, the pistons push against the oil and turns the energy into heat, which is how it helps absorb the energy. Here, wait. And then how pendulum power works is, this is a strategy mostly used in skyscrapers, but it's where engineers suspend like a large metal ball inside the building. And so when it shakes, the pendulum swings in the opposite direction of the building, which helps counteract the shaking of the building. And then a third method is vibration shields, which is basically where large rings of metal or concrete and plastic are buried underneath the building. And when the shock waves come towards the building, the rings help redirect the shock around the building so it doesn't shake as much.
All right, so now just to go over some buildings in SF that are important. This is the Grace Cathedral, which was built on Nob Hill, I think almost a century ago. There used to be a bunch of mansions there, and then some rich people came and decided that they wanted to build something there. And so actually, when the Great Earthquake happened, they decided to renovate it. And actually all of these tiles right here are actually fireproof tiles. And they halfway through, they decided we don't want to do this anymore for some reason that I'm not sure of. And so the rest of the tiling here is actually completely unfinished. And you can see like straight through into the ceiling. And if you break a lock on a door, you can actually go up there. And getting into the architecture and like the rocks that are in it, beneath all these white paper doves, there's actually a stone altar. It's probably one of the only pieces of stone in the cathedral because most of it is made of concrete, but it's still really interesting. And the main doors are made of gold and bronze plating, which is cool. Then our second building, wrong slide. Our second building, this is probably one of the oldest synagogues, I think, in the US, I'm pretty sure. Especially during like right after the 1989 Great Earthquake, a lot of buildings collapsed, and there was a really big push to renovate buildings by the SF government. And so this building had to go through, I think, like a multitude of things that they had to do. I mean, they did this thing where they put a bunch of poles through the rock, and they had to strengthen the whole building and the foundation, and they had to put rubber all over to absorb shock. And those are renovations that are still happening to this day. They went through a bunch of phases and they only really finished, I think, about a few years ago. And then lastly is City Hall. Like all the buildings, the 1989 earthquake really messed things up. I almost said shook things up, but then I would have hated myself forever. It's made of granite and marble, which is pretty clear with these pillars. These are mostly granite, and then the interior floor is made of marble. And like the synagogue, they actually put metal poles with rubber, which I think we talked about on one of our earlier slides, so that when there's an earthquake and the ground moves, and it's not too brittle, so it won't just shatter, like the entire building won't implode, and it's not too loose, so it won't slide over the ground. It lets it move a little bit, and it gives it a bit of wiggle room. And those are actually changes that were made all across the Bay Area. Actually, I know for a fact that like my house is like physically bolted to the ground. Most of the houses on my block would slide across the ground if there was an earthquake over 6. And so, yeah, it's definitely changed our culture. I mean, in SF, throughout all of middle school and elementary school, they teach us how to like hide under our desks and protect ourselves. It's definitely impacted the way we have to be careful. And that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. So